Alrighty, so, hi there YouTube. Welcome back to our next little discussion video in our little lead up to Scarvo series. So if you have been following the entire sort of Scarvo news cycle, there is some very interesting things that may be coming. In particular, in one of the recent trailers, it looked like DROWSY, the status condition from Legends Arceus, was present, which is terrifying. I personally am not a huge fan on the DROWSY mechanic, but if it is going to be in Scarvo, there are a lot of things to think about in regards to how it will function, how it will impact certain Pokemon, and in particular, one of my favorite Pokemon to use, Butterfree, is going to be heavily impacted. So today I'm going to talk about a few specific things. I'm going to talk about what DROWSY will look like in Scarvo, because we don't know for sure yet, and so there's a lot of possibilities. Second, I'm going to go in depth on Butterfree, what Butterfree is, what Butterfree does, how Butterfree will change if DROWSY is impacted, which is a lot, but also not as much as you might think. And then lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about how that might apply to things other than Butterfree. Even though Butterfree is probably the most powerful Pokemon with the current sleep mechanics ever. So, less important than Butterfree is saying something, but, it is still less important than Butterfree. So, without further ado, let's do a little bit of talking. Now, DROWSY at present in Legends Arceus, I actually had trouble looking this up, the actual odds for it. Like, Bulbapedia didn't have it, Quick Doodle Search didn't tell me anything. I ended up finding this thread right here on the Smodon forums. That was like a bunch of mechanics research about Legends Arceus' battle mechanics. I guess they were kind of getting ready for if PvP was ever a thing. But according to this, DROWSY has a 33% chance to move and a 33% damage increase to the Pokemon that is under the DROWSY status condition. And I think this is a realistic scenario for DROWSY to have in coming to a main series game. 33% is not that big of a boost, but it's also kind of a big boost. It's equivalent to a Life Orb boost, so that's how I'm going to be calculating it when I'm analyzing Butterfree's performance by adding a Life Orb to it, basically. And so that's a significant boost, but I don't think it's too much. In my initial kind of like judgings of how it would look, I was thinking probably like a 50% or a 2 times boost. Because like a 1.1 or a 1.2 would be kind of minor and not worth it. But I think 33, if that is what it is a pretty good, is pretty acceptable to me. I don't think it's too good, I don't think it's too bad. But even a 33% boost is still big, don't get me wrong. So it's definitely going to be a thing. And 33% chance to not move is a lot, actually. Because you think old Confusion was 50%. I think 33 is what Confusion is nowadays. I could just look that up. I won't. But so 33% chance to move it's a lot, but it's not too bad. Compare that to the 25% chance that you get from regular paralysis. For the record, you might see it on screen. Regular paralysis is a 33% chance to move in Arceus. So it really could go either way. Between 25 and 33. I'm going to guess my analysis off of 33. But it could also be 25 to match paralysis, or 33 to match confusion. It's really hard to say. Personally, I think it might be too good at 33, but, at the end of the day, we don't actually have control over what the mechanics will look like when they get here. So I'm just going to take a guess and go from there for my analysis for now. So we have DROWSY as a 33% chance not to move and a 33 or 1.33 times damage multiplier. So essentially, it's a chance to hit yourself in confusion, but without the damage, and you take 33% more damage. Now, if we take a quick look, there is something else about this in general for Arceus, and that is that stat boosts or status conditions always wear off for all of them. This means that there's a big mystery element with Drowsy that we don't know how it'll carry over. For instance, if Drowsy wears off after 1 to 3 turns like Sleep does, I think it'll be garbage. Like, that's, like, it might come up, but, like, only a couple turns to take advantage of Drowsy seems really low. Like, it definitely could happen. Like, that could definitely be a thing. And people would probably still use it on good Pokemon that can throw out the sleep anyway. But if it's only 1 to 3 turns, probably not great. If it's Eternal, I think that might be too good. Because that would be like a permanent, like, hampering of a Pokemon. And for example, Toxic currently is a permanent hamper to any defensive Pokemon that is susceptible to Toxic. Which could actually be a nice thing, to have another status condition that is a permanent hamper to defensive Pokemon. Because at the moment, if you're like a solid defensive Pokemon, Burn is a little bit of an inconvenience. Paralysis is a bit of an inconvenience, but like Toxic is the only truly debilitating one. It might be really nice to have another truly debilitating status condition to use against defensive Pokemon. But that's kind of a thing, like, you know, it could go up in the air. Or it could split the difference and be like a Gen 5 sleep where it's like 3 to 8 turns or something crazy like that. That could also be a thing. Which would kind of split the difference between the two, and I would definitely be okay with that if that's how it ended up in the games. So, as I've said before in a couple of my streams, in general, I'm not a huge fan of Drowsy because I like Sleep's current implementation. I think it could use some work. In particular, I'd love if they just told us what the sleep counter is when you slept something, so both players could plan around it. But, like, overall, it's still, like, you know, I love the dynamic it brings. For doubles especially, being able to remove an opposing Pokemon from the game with the status, I think is a healthy imbalance, especially because Sleep has so much counterplay. And in addition to that, I think that what's the word I'm going for? Oh, and in singles, while I hate the implementation of Sleep Claws in Showdown, I think that that could definitely be changed to be something a bit more card accurate. I think that the dynamic it has in singles of being able to remove a Pokemon is also a good thing. I enjoy it. I think there are certain Pokemon that are entirely built around sleep, and I would hate for Drowsy to sort of ruin that implementation. Which, you know what, it actually might not. I may be overreacting. I think that all of the current sleep Pokemon could definitely adapt to the new Drowsy mechanics, and maybe I'm overreacting. In fact, I think it's possible, especially if Drowsy does not wear off at all, like it's a permanent status effect like Paralysis or Burn, that it might actually be better than current sleep. That's a bit of a hot take, though, and I'm not here to talk about hot takes. I'm here to talk about the hottest take, that is Butterfree. Look at how cute Butterfree is. Look at that little dance. And with that, let's start talking about Butterfree in general. So if you haven't used Butterfree competitively in a while, perhaps you're not one of the few people that plays Gen 5 NU and RU. Or maybe you're like me and you like to use Butterfree competitively in every generation, constantly, even though you shouldn't. I do it. There was actually a period in Sword and Shield OU, I think it was either right after home or right before home, where Butterfree was actually really good. I would use a lot of Butterfree with the only set you should use on Butterfree, which is Sleep Cycle Butterfree is what I used to call it. I think they came up with it in Gen 5, but I just kind of came up with it on my own one day. I think it's one of those, like, common sense strategies, where the idea is you sub Quiver Dance Sleep Powder, And any mon that is susceptible to sleep and that you outspeed, Butterfree can 1v1 effortlessly. Just set up subs until you get free turns while they're asleep. Quiver Dance up, which lets you be faster than a lot of things. And then just, blast them away with hurricanes. And it is a very fun set to use. When Conkeldurr was big in Sword and Shield OU, Butterfree actually found a surprising amount of ways to get onto the field with its 4 times Mach Punch resists. And it could even take the odd close combat. It was Butterfree was a great Pokemon for a while. I used to love using it. With Hurricane that it got in Gen 8, it was even able to kind of help break through Ferrothorn for some of its other team members, because Ferrothorn would have to take the sleep. But if you just keep on battering away at it with high base power Hurricanes, like, you're still making progress, even if you're not getting off the sleep cycling. I'd start off a day and be like, all right, there's Corviknight and Blissey, so there's only 2 Pokemon that Butterfree needs to sleep cycle to beat. So once I get through one of those, Butterfree can sweep. And it's kind of games like that. That being said, Butterfree is obviously not a perfect Pokemon. Its low initial speed that really forces it into timid. And its incredible frailty and weakness before it set up multiple Quiver Dances means that it's not the best. But what happens if it can't even sleep cycle anymore? So let's take a look at what Butterfree will actually do with DROWSY. If we pull up the calc here, Butterfree has never been the most impressive Pokemon. But let's take a look at what it can do. Let's say that, for instance, you're Butterfree versus a Toxapex. So a neutral Hurricane to a physically defensive Pex honestly does a surprising amount of damage. And you add a Life Orb to that, which is going to be my stand-in for DROWSY, assuming the damage boost is a 33% one, like a Life Orb. And suddenly you have a chance to 2-hit KO. And Toxapex has a chance not to move. So after you have DROWSY Toxapex, it's no longer a response to Butterfree, even with Haze. And that's kind of the big idea. But is it actually enough? Let's take for comparison something like Blissey. Blissey was a great Pokemon against for Butterfree to sleep cycle previously in Sword and Shield OU, because you could put it to sleep, set up your subs, just wait until it's asleep for more than one turn, get to like +6 Quiver Dance, and now you're blowing it away with 2 Hurricanes. And you don't even necessarily have to get to +6. So I think once you get to +3, yeah, +3 is more than enough. So, like that. But now, you can no longer do that. So now you're locked at that 23%. And you can only reliably get 1 Quiver Dance against it, because you have to, you have to take those seismic tosses. And even with the DROWSY boost, look at that. So you're comparing 20%. So let's just put something random on there. 17% to 20%. That's definitely a boost, but it's not that big of a boost. Even if we're talking +1 with the DROWSY boost, that's still an incredibly low chance to 3-hit KO. And you're going to get Seismic Toss, you're going to have to guess when to sub to avoid just wasting a turn or taking a T-Wave or Toxic, and you're going to lose to Blissey. You can't sleep cycle it anymore, and it's sad. We're going to lose that. Even with the addition of that extra, Life Orb's worth of damage, you're still not going to be able to bust through some of the most dangerous special walls. Now, there are still some Pokemon that you can beat, let's take a look at Clef real quick. So Clef's Moonblast, Butterfree is so weak. Clef's Moonblast, this is like a mixed special defensive one, so I think this is a fair one. Does 53%. That's so sad. But at +1 SPDF, you don't take as much. You get to +2. And you'll usually outspeed it because Clef isn't fast. So, you get to +2, so you take like 30%, and then you take 25%, but now you're at +2, and now you can relatively safely sub up and get additional quiver dances and leftovers, and once you're at +3, you just one-shot the cliff, and now you're set up to do heavy damage to the rest of the team. So, you're still doing okay against Pex, you're still doing good against Clefable. It's... Butterfree can still do what it wants to do, it just can't do it as reliably anymore. And that's the thing on DROWSY. And that's me talking about DROWSY with its whole 33% damage boost, which is something. Which is also worth noting that when you're doing this, you're also setting up for your other team members. So, for example, if you, let's say they respond to your Butterfree with their T-Tar, and you get the sleep on and the extra boost on that. So let's blow up T-Tar real quick. Especially defensive, just to really stick to Butterfree. But even with the DROWSY boost, you're still not doing that much damage to it. Even Bud Buzz, not doing that much. But if you set that up for another Pokemon, because now let's say you're having like a double Quiver Dance core. Let's look at Volcarona real quick. Volcarona at +1 with Bud Buzz is 46 to 53. Let's say we're an offensive one. That's a lot. But you add a Life Orb boost on top of that. That's 70 to 82. That's a lot. That is not a lot of chip. That is enough chip to where, like, if you add Stealth Rocks to help mitigate the leftovers a little bit, and then you got that, like, 20% from Butterfree, that's well within range of, helping to break through it. So, that DROWSY boost can be helpful. However, there is one thing that I've kind of left out here. And that is not just the damage boost. There's also the chance to not move. Which, let's hop back to Butterfree, and let's do a little math here. Butterfree, how are you doing? Are you still awake there? Yeah, okay, so, we've talked a lot about how, DROWSY... It's not enough, right? Just that, like, extra Life Orbs worth of damage to spend a turn on isn't really worth it. Even if it can help you, like, gain more advantage later. Especially because Butterfree doesn't force a lot out. It just doesn't. It's not that type of Pokemon. It just doesn't deal enough immediate damage. But what if we still tried to take advantage of that chance to not move? Because assuming we're at 33%, and remember these numbers will be different in if it's 25 like Paralysis instead of 33 like Confusion. That's like about a 1 in 3 chance. And Butterfree with leftovers can safely set up, 5 substitutes? Even if you get every single one broken. So let's say they switch in their Butterfree counter as you sleep powder them. And now you can Quiver Dance. And now you set up a sub. And they move, it's fine. Break it. Set up another sub. They move again, break it, You're down 50% plus 2 rounds of leftovers recovery. You sub again, break it, The odds are not in your favor. And you sub again, and they don't move. So now you have a free sub up. And now you can safely Quiver Dance. And then they break your sub. But now you can set up another sub. And there's a 1 in 3 chance that you get another free sub for either another free Quiver Dance or for you to start battering away at them with +1. Plus the Life Orb equivalent DROWSY boost. That's something else. Think about that in the context of something like Clefable, where after a couple of Quiver Dances, they're not breaking your sub anymore. Think about that in the context of, something like Blissey, where, even though they're blocking even though they can break your sub easily, the fact of the matter is that, they also, can swap out to avoid the sleep. But if they do, that gives you a free sub or a free chance to quiver dance. And keep in mind that because of that additional damage boost that any drowsy Pokemon has to take, that means that you are setting up for your other offensive teammates at the same time. So, you set up the quiver dance, and then suddenly your Draco Meteor dropping Dragapult is in a much better position, because if they try to go Blissey on it, suddenly they're taking more damage than they might be able to take. Especially if you factor in stuff like spikes or knockoff and whatnot. And Butterfree can still potentially sleep cycle on that Blissey depending on the odds. Because yeah, there's a chance that you only get 1 out of every 5 chances to not move. But there's also chances you get more. And there's also another move that Butterfree gets, called Air Slash. And so suddenly, the sleep cycling Butterfree we might be looking at is no longer one that wants to throw away heavy hurricanes, but one that wants to Air Slash things into oblivion. Let's take a look at another matchup real quick. Let's look at Butterfree versus Corviknight. Now, when I was playing with Butterfree and OU more often, Corviknight was one of those Pokemon that's like, yeah, I'm not getting through this unless I sleep cycle it. And you know what? Let's go max Spadef Corviknight. Let's really put it against Butterfree's odds. Now, you're dealing, 20% with Hurricane, 12% with Air Slash. Especially if that's the leftovers Corviknight, that's not much. But, let's add that Life Orb on there. Let's add that Sleep. That's 15 compared to 22. That's a little better. You did that one reliable Quiver Dance. From the 1 in 3 chance. After your third substitute, you did it, so you still have 2 more subs to go. That's pretty good. And now you go for Air Slash. And there's so you're doing 26%, and there's I don't know what the 33% chance on a 30% is. I don't think it's quite 50. I think it's around 50%. I'm not an odds man. Because that's about a 50% chance for Corviknight to move. And if you do that, that buys you an extra turn of leftovers. And because you're also dealing damage with them, that's a chance to get yourself another sub. Now, because of pressure, the odds aren't necessarily in your favor. Air Slash doesn't have infinite PP. But let's say you get to +2. Now you're dealing 30 to 35. Now, those flinches, those not moving due to drowsies, those are going to add up. Those are going to be more leftovers, more substitutes. And you have a realistic chance that Butterfree is able to sleep cycle a Corviknight. And also, do we really need Compound Eyes on Butterfree? Because, we don't have to land a dozen sleep powders anymore. We don't have to land all of them to sleep cycle, so it's not that important. And especially if we're using Air Slash instead of Hurricane, let's just throw Tinted Lens on there. And now, suddenly, hubba hubba, at +2, Corviknight's 2-shotted. At only +1, it's almost not worth it to... Oh, wait, no, this should be timid. Whoops. Yeah. So at only +1, we have a chance to 2-hit KO after rocks, or a very reliable 3-hit KO. And with the 50% chance for Corviknight to not move, that's huge. You can still sleep cycle things with Butterfree. And also remember that you don't necessarily have to go for the sleep cycle immediately. You can wait until you're going to have to force them to roost later. or until you have another chance. Like, you can go over the first one, and if you don't get it, just go ahead and save it for later. Get your Butterfree out there, keep rocks off the field, bring it back in, and bada bing, bada boom. Butterfree's in business. So, do I think Butterfree is going to be a high-level OU threat in Generation 8 with the Drowsy mechanics? Yes, I do. Moving on. It is worth noting that Butterfree is not the only Pokemon with access to sleep moves, and I do think that there are some interesting developments to keep in mind if Drowsy becomes a thing. The biggest one of which is that a lot of Pokemon get Hypnosis, and if you don't have to land every Hypnosis, and if it lasts forever, it might actually be worth using Hypnosis on offensive Pokemon. Because if you're a Pokemon like Gengar, or a Pokemon like Galarian Articuno, or a Pokemon like Gallade, heck, Xurkitree, Blacephalon, who's the other big one I was wanting to show off? Alakazam. What you have to do now, regular Ninetales, what you have to do now is not land a Hypnosis to prevent yourself from being hit. If you're forcing Pokemon out anyway with your heavy damage, then all you have to do is land the one, and suddenly that Pokemon is crippled against you forever. Think about, instead of like the piddly little Butterfree calcs we were looking at, think about Gengar landing a Hypnosis on a T-Charge that switches in to pivot in. Now that it's taken like that extra percent, Gengar probably won't stay in this time, but the next time it's in, if it clicks Crocus Blast on a T-Tar, like, hoo boy, what, it's gone. No more T-Tar. So, I think that's another big thing to think about for Drowsy that might actually make it better than Sleep, is the fact that if you don't have to land it multiple times in order for it to be effective against something, you're going to see a lot more Pokemon using Hypnosis in OU, because even though it's only a 60% chance, if you only have to land it once, and you're a Pokemon that's threatening enough to buy yourself those free turns, Pokemon with Hypnosis will be able to open up for themselves a lot more effectively than they ever have before. Imagine Hypnosis 3 attacks Gengar, or even Hypnosis Nasty Plot. Because if the only thing standing in Gengar's way is a Pokemon that's bulky enough to take one hit at +2, but you can't safely break for itself because you have to, maintain your health to get that Nasty Plot later. If you hit it with a Hypnosis on the switch, then that's a permanent crippling that, that the next time you come in and you get that Nasty Plot, suddenly nothing can take you on. And that's really what I kind of wanted to get at with this video, is that for all the fun I'm going to have with Butterfree trying to sleep cycle, for all the weirdness that is how Legends Arceus mechanics will end up being imported, I think this is the real threat, is that Hypnosis Pokemon, or really any Pokemon with sleep that is offensive enough to get itself a free turn, this is going to be a way for Pokemon to help set up for their own breaking later in the game for them to sweep. It's terrifying, but also kind of exciting. There exists plenty of counterplay to sleep already, and I'm 100% sure that will all carry over for Drowsy. Grass types being immune to powder moves, electric terrain from Tapu Koko being everywhere, Pokemon with Insomnia. I'm assuming Early Bird will just be a immunity to Drowsy, at least that's kind of what I'm hoping. But there's definitely going to be a lot of really cool stuff when we play with Drowsy. And while I'll miss Sleep, I am, after making this video and looking at how it will actually play out, I'm actually kind of excited for Drowsy. On an official note, I still prefer Sleep at the moment, and there are still questions. It could be 25 instead of 33. The damage boost might be bigger than 33. It might have just been smaller for Arceus. We don't know. But regardless, I am going to be using Butterfree when Scarlet and Violet show up, and I'm going to have a blast. So, thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to check out the previous discussion video we did about item mechanics changing, and be sure to check out the next discussion video next Thursday at 6, which will be about... I haven't decided yet. It'll be fun, though. So, be sure to, leave a like, subscribe, comment with any other discussions you want to see before Scarvo. And thank you all very much for watching. Bye!